Discovering that your partner has been lying to you for nearly 3 years can shatter your sense of trust and security. When my boyfriend's stories about his financial independence and family support began to unravel, I was left questioning everything about our relationship. Are these just white lies or signs of a deeper issue? I'm torn between understanding his motivations and recognizing the red flags. Is it possible to rebuild trust, or should I move on? Here's the full story, and I need your advice on whether this is a deal breaker. TLDR, my boyfriend of almost 3 years told me a series of white lies that, to me, seem more serious. Can't tell if I'm overreacting or if this indicates a bigger problem. I'll try to make this as short as possible, but it's going to be long because there is so much lying going on. My boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 3 years, and we have been living together for 2. Obviously, we have a pretty good relationship with ups and downs, but we make it work and are happy. A little background on me/my boyfriend for context. I grew up in a single-parent household without my father present. My mother did the best she could, but we struggled financially. Despite the difficulties, we always had each other. From a young age, I've wanted to repay my mother for her sacrifices. I've worked hard to support her financially by paying her bills and sending her money regularly. Tragically, my brother passed away 5 years ago, leaving me as my mother's sole support. It's stressful, but I love her and believe it's the right thing to do. This is important because my boyfriend has a similar background, and we've bonded over our shared experiences. He also supports his parents financially, and we often discuss the challenges it brings. I don't usually confide in many people, so having someone who understands and supports me is incredibly meaningful. So here's where the lies come in, and I need someone to either tell me I'm not crazy, and this is fucked up, or that I am crazy, and this isn't a huge deal. I'm fine with either. When we met, my boyfriend lived in a condo in a pretty swanky part of the city. I live in the US Northeast. He told me he owned that apartment/condo. I found this to be interesting/odd because he was 28 at the time, and I know this property is upwards of $650,000 and on the low end. He was in an entry-level job for only like 2 years, so the numbers just didn't really add up. Whatever, maybe he's good at saving. But then, since living together, I never once saw a piece of mail for a mortgage payment, electric bill, taxes, or anything else. Not for 2 whole years. Very odd. Also, when we started living together, he didn't have his room rented out in the former apartment yet, so he was still responsible for that portion of the rent. He would send a Venmo payment to his mother on the 1st of every month for his portion. I don't own property, but I can't think of a scenario where I would Venmo my mother to pay the mortgage on a property I supposedly own. Getting more odd. He would then go to his parents' house for an afternoon and come back really upset. Usually, when I asked why, it was because they were having financial problems, and he needed to help them. I totally understood this and supported him. He literally has cried on my shoulder about this many times. He tried to start a company years back and eventually got into debt. He told me this debt was $17,000 and that he paid it off. I'm confused because I met him only 2 to 3 years after the supposed debt accrued/company dissolved, and it was already paid off. He told me that when he moved back home after the business failed, he was $17,000 in debt, living at his parents' house and working at a minimum wage job. I'll never know how someone with a minimum wage job pays off that much debt in 3 years. We got into a fight a few weeks ago, and I finally had enough and confronted him about these things. Long story short, he doesn't help his parents. They actually pay his phone bill, which was a lie. He doesn't own that apartment, and he didn't pay off that debt from his company. He initially told me his parents helped pay it off, and then 3 minutes later, came clean and said that his business partner paid it off. So I have literally no idea what the truth is there. And if anything, in my eyes, his parents are the ones who are financially supporting him. So now I'm dating a 31-year-old man who doesn't pay his own phone bill, was lying to me or completely fabricating aspects of his life for 3 years, and then when confronted about it, continued to make up lies and then came clean about them 5 minutes later. I'm concerned that he could lie for this long about fundamentally important things like our values. I sincerely thought I would marry this man. He seemed to understand me like no one else and be truly caring and genuine. Now I have a hard time rationalizing actually planning life around someone who would lie about not only their background and family, etc., but also financial aspects. Aside from that, I now can't tell what the truth is and what a lie is. I've also noticed other things he has lied about. I called him out on it, and he has denied it outright to my face. I see this as a form of gaslighting, as I know I'm not wrong, but he is trying to convince me otherwise. Am I overreacting? Is this a white lie that went haywire? Or is this actually a series of complete and utter bullshit used to manipulate me? And also, is it insane for me to actually consider life with this man? Any advice is appreciated. Well, it's over. As many of you suggested, I couldn't possibly build my life around someone who lied so pathologically. I initially agreed to work on the relationship, provided that my ex gets therapy to work through why he felt compelled to lie about so many aspects of his life. I also requested that he come clean to his parents, my parents, and anyone else to whom he lied or embellished the truth. He agreed to this and seemed genuinely interested in working on things and himself. I really wanted it to work out and was willing to accept that maybe he was just wildly insecure / had some attachment issues or something that caused him to act this way. I waited 4 months for the therapy and confessions to happen, and they never did, not surprisingly. For those of you who were confused about how I didn't know he did not own this apartment for so long, I thought I had never met his parents, but I had met them many times. But, to be honest, they are pretty cold people who I never really connected with that much, and was definitely uncomfortable enough to be like, hey, is your son a pathological liar, or is all of this true? On top of that, he also told a lot of these lies to his parents, so they wouldn't be keen on what I was talking about anyway. It got to the point where anything that came out of his mouth seemed like a lie, or at least a half-truth. Also, I lost respect for someone who could lie so easily, and then not even feel guilty enough, or any remorse to come clean about it. I'm pretty honest, almost to a fault. So, the cognitive dissonance that occurred from being with someone who had basically opposite values from mine was tough. I'm sure there were a lot of other things he was hiding, but I don't even care. I've been single and living alone for a week, and to be frank, I'm killing it. I'm now responsible for 100% of my rent, and I barely have any savings left, but I still feel like a giant weight has lifted off my shoulders. Crazy how that works. I want to thank all the people who gave me the hard truth and encouraged me to leave. Even though it was all coming from internet strangers, it still helps to hear people tell you that you deserve more than what you're getting. I'm so happy, and I must be giving off a much better vibe because I've already had 2 dates and been asked for my number a handful of times. I'm a server at a restaurant, lol. I sound like a cocky asshole, but God, does it feel good to remember you're not as worthless as someone made you feel?
Story 2.
Is it ever acceptable to insult or yell at your partner? I'm 28, and I've been dating my 28-year-old boyfriend for a short of a year. Now I know that he's not good for me, and that we shouldn't be together for many reasons in the relationship, but I can do better. Sadly, I have a hero complex and try to save these broken men who still live with their mothers. I'm aware of this. The problem I'm struggling with is that my brain is fighting my heart on this topic, and I think I should be blaming myself because I wasn't a better listener. Despite breaking up, I want to be better for the person and for myself. So I try not to just blame one person for everything and take accountability for myself. The argument began because I mistakenly assumed he was screening my calls. I started by saying, "I don't like it when you screen my calls." His reaction was based on that assumption, which was wrong of me, and I acknowledge that. However, I don't think it was a major character attack or defamatory accusation. There have been instances when he was playing a game or just scrolling on his phone while on the toilet, and he screened my calls without any valid reason. I didn't say it in a screaming or awful way. I was just slightly irritated. I asked him to give me an update on a sensitive topic really quickly, so I could feel relief. It was regarding his health and an appointment he had. He went into the appointment initially dialed to 100, freaked out, and left me on a cliffhanger, as if something terrible happened. He also sent me a credit application for the clinic, so I had questions about what the hell I missed. I told him that I had a few phone calls to make and that I didn't really have time, but I had a few minutes right now. He said that he would call me after he got dressed, which usually takes around 40 minutes, not even exaggerating. I asked him if he could just tell me really quickly because I had things I had to do, and then it turned into him saying that I was stripping his dignity away because he was in a towel and I would not let him get dressed. I personally felt like this was dramatic and not true. Was it a phone call while talking in a towel? It doesn't seem too demeaning to me, especially since we've been intimate for a long time. We've had many conversations while he was in a towel or less while getting dressed. I can admit that he likely felt pressured, needed, and unheard. I've had to apologize to him multiple times for this. Anyway, the argument progressed over a couple of days, and things boiled over to a point where he called me toxic, manipulative, and crazy. I've broken up with him before over him saying these choice words to me because they are extremely triggering and upsetting to me. I've also dumped him for screaming at me as well. We have discussed how upsetting these things are for me due to my childhood, and that there are certain things that I just can't handle. This was a boundary for me. When he called me those things, I even asked him if he was serious and meant those things, giving him a chance to recant what he said, and he said no, I am acting that way, and that I deserve it. Stuffing my own emotions down, I kept working to try to talk to him through this argument so we could be okay, and then discuss those issues with those choice words while we were calm. I gave him the floor to talk about his feelings and what was going on, which was going somewhat well until he told me that I sucked. I stopped him and asked him what the point of name calling was, and if that helped anything other than making him feel better. I lost my capacity to listen to him and hear him out once he started name calling again. In my opinion, name calling isn't talking about your feelings or your experience. It's just unnecessary and rude. Because I cut him off and didn't let him continue about his feelings due to his name calling, he got more frustrated, and things progressed into him saying that I only want to argue and I only want to smoke, which is not true. I had plans in place to come to his house the following day to babysit his nephew, because his mother asked me to. He asked me why I would follow through with this despite the fact that we were fighting, and why I thought he would allow me into his house while fighting. I can see how he finds this odd or somewhat disrespectful, but I did not want to involve his mother in our fighting by telling her that I couldn't come due to our fighting. I knew we could resolve things before it even became an issue. I'd already told him that if we couldn't figure things out, he would need to tell his mother I couldn't come because he said I wasn't allowed over, rather than making up a lame excuse or feeling like I was tattling on him. Eventually, it escalated to him screaming through the phone, not just yelling, but actually screaming. He screamed at me that it was his mother, his nephew, his family, and that I didn't have the right. My heart sank. It hurt me immensely to be screamed at, and furthermore, he has expressed to me before that I am his family, and his family is my family multiple times. I do not have contact with my family, so it was initially comforting to know that I had solace with them. His family meant the world to me. His recanting his family from me, screaming it to me, really hurt. I hung up and told him he couldn't scream at me. He responded, "Boo-hoo, answer the phone." I called him back and told him I don't want anything from him ever again. I'm done with him leaving me alone. Personally, I tend to believe what people say when they are angry, more than what they say when they are calm. I think the truth comes out when your emotions are flared, especially if it's being repeated. I understand that people get tired when fighting, and fights happen. I know I wasn't perfect, and I came off as demanding or pushy. I did not hit below the belt. Did I deserve this? I just need to have a little reassurance so I don't see the good in him and text him back, apologizing for something I shouldn't be. Does anything warrant being screamed at and being called toxic, manipulative, and crazy?